You may be interested in hearing the astrological take on the candidates in the UK elections. Not all of you will be interested in this, but I've been asked to have a look at the astrology here, and I don't have a complete set of data for everyone, so this is going to be very general and very quick. So I've just made a few notes here. Now, I think that Brown and Cameron have got similar issues around radical change, which is going to be affecting their public persona. Challenges are going to push them sometimes really hard over the months to come, and they feel like they've got to rehabilitate, regenerate their worldly image at work, at home, and also I think the balance of power is going to shift one with the other. In many ways they've got similar charts. They've kind of got a mirror image of each other's charts. One has Aries rising, that's Gordon Brown, and the other has Libra rising, which is its opposite sign. Gordon Brown is a real hard worker. He puts work before, duty, work before everything else. He's quite military in his approach in a way. He's really dogged. And I think he's going to have a heavier workload on his shoulders, and in no mood to compromise over June and into July. Lots of hard works behind the scenes, but also more selflessness needed in collaborative relationships. But on election day itself, he's going to have some lovely aspects coming over his Venus and Mars from Jupiter, which is all about expansion. But because he is going to be working so hard, his health may be affected because his buttons are going to get pushed as well. He'll feel hypersensitive as Mars transits his Pisces planets over June and July. On the one hand, he could be thinking big and maybe a little bit overconfident, rather excitable and very competitive, but also feeling frustrated and challenged, pushing maybe too hard, touchy, oversensitive, which he can be sometimes because he can get a bit knotted up, and definitely feeling emotionally frustrated, maybe rubbing others up the wrong way, feeling challenged because he feels that reforms that he wants to push through are being blocked. Now, both of them, Brown and Cameron, are going to have to be more self-disciplined and patient in the way they develop their ideas over months to come, and both of them will probably feel frustrated and irritable and at odds with the views of certain others. But with Brown, his willpower and doggedness, coupled with the fact that Jupiter is going over his Pisces planets this year from behind the scenes, and then next year coming over his ascendant into his rising sign Aries, means that he will have an expansive time, probably next year more than this year. It really kicks off next year. More contact with foreign lands, travel maybe, and that'll be a major cycle of expansion for him personally from next spring, and it'll allow him to make concrete his ideologies. He'll be working hard, though, to stabilize things at home, make changes, but in a step-by-step manner, and he needs to control his sometimes irascible responses. Now, Pluto squaring his Uranus is going to shake his very foundations for the rest of 2010 and throughout 2011. That may mean that there could be a new regime at home. When I say at home, it's where he spends most of the day, so it's not just his home and family set up, but it could mean that there's a new type of governing that's going on. It could mean that. Late summer, that's from October. It's going to be really difficult for Gordon Brown to make the changes he wants, and he'll be pulling out the stops and hanging in there for the long haul, but he's like that anyway. he's rather covert and private. He can be a bit sneaky. Maybe he overlooks certain details. Maybe he stays up all night burning the midnight oil and comes in the morning with a stack of papers and says, "Okay, guys, this is the way it's going to be." But you know, he needs to learn how to be easier with people and maybe to inform people of how he sees things in time for them to be able to adapt to the new situation, the new information, the new thinking that he has. But nevertheless, I think he's an essentially caring individual. The only thing is that he might not look after himself very well, and he wouldn't take kindly to a joint rulership. His rising sign Aries is the warrior sign. It rules the head. Often people with Aries rising have maybe some trauma or accident to the head, and Gordon Brown did suffer. Well, he nearly lost the sight of both of his eyes, and he's only got sight in one eye now. But he's definitely happier being at the controls and in the cockpit and flying the aircraft with this nation on board according to his belief and his competence. In any coalition with Cameron, he'd find himself, Cameron that is, would find himself probably underrated, unappreciated by Brown, and Brown would feel very blocked by David Cameron. Like Brown, Cameron has got some very challenging aspects coming up involving Saturn and Pluto on these very important points in his chart. The two men have the same over the next 12 months, but Cameron, the charmer, won't have the same chance to expand on his beliefs and ideals and his, what he's personally interested in, and get the opportunity for growth in these areas as much as Brown is going to. He'll feel rather handcuffed and limited by those transits, especially Saturn, which is about to come over his ascendant, and that's going to be a new Saturn cycle, a new 28-year Saturn cycle in his life. Now, Nick Clegg, I've got very incomplete birth data for him. He's got a very restrictive energy around him on polling day, affecting Uranus. He's already had Uranus on his Saturn in the run-up to this, but he doesn't have as far as I can see, he doesn't have the powerful clout of Pluto aspecting his career point, but I don't know what his career point is. But he doesn't seem to have that same, on the one hand, problem, on the other hand, real significant and major and radical change in his public persona as the other two do. But I can't really judge what that might mean because, as I say, I can't see the way his chart's orientated. Brown and Cameron have got some real life-changing conditions coming up for them. I think Nick Clegg on polling day, even though he's got this rather tight aspect on his Uranus, he may be on something of a crest of a wave. That will be from the end of May, June, July, August. Most of September he gets a beautiful aspect coming across from Jupiter over his natal Jupiter and Venus. So that means a time of mega social expression, light, friendly, things flowing well. He should feel generous and optimistic, maybe a bit overconfident though. Maybe, overlooking the details. Definitely a time for him to be expanding upon his ideologies. He'll be on quite a learning curve, learning the ropes, but he must make sure that he doesn't miss those important details, as he may be glorying too much in the feel-good factor. However, this is going to be an optimum time for Nick Clegg for his personal and intellectual growth. In February 2011, Jupiter makes a lovely aspect to his moon, and that will mean, that time to seize the day, really, for him. But all of these Jupiter aspects are extremely motivating and opening new doors for him and giving him a wider range of options. Now, the transit of Saturn over his Uranus on election day and throughout the rest of May and June, and also transiting Uranus on his Saturn, which is going out, will be out by end of May, early June. That might mean a lot of inner stress might get suddenly released. It may also mean the unexpected could happen and a sort of a breaking free, but because it's Uranus and Saturn, it will have to be in stages, so there could sort of like be mini cracks that happen. Nothing's going to happen instantly, and patience, which he has in large measure because he's a Capricorn, will be needed over this time period. But he's basically got a very optimistic nature because he has the moon in Sagittarius. And the eclipse on June the 26th, well, that's not going to affect him as strongly as the other two. It's nearest his Mercury, so that means that signals there could be a change in the way he puts himself across with communications, the way he thinks, his mental geography, chance to make improvements in the way he delivers his ideas and qualifies his arguments and so on. Now, I just want to mention Alex Salmond as well. He's got some brilliant hits from Jupiter on his natal planets over May, with nothing really coming across from Pluto and Saturn, although Saturn is trining his natal Chiron over May, June and July, which could do something to heal the general feeling of rejection or being sidelined by others in partnership or with those he works with, work colleagues, because he's got Chiron in the 7th house natally. These others, these opposite numbers seem to underestimate this man's deep understanding and empathy for the feeling of others. Salmond is someone who has great inner vision, I think. He has the moon in Pisces, he's got the sun in Capricorn, and he's got the common touch as well. So those two things together is good news. And his Uranus-Jupiter rising shows his character to be innovative, reformist, and a tad nonconformist. He's very progressive in his views, probably bright enough and instinctive enough to know when to make changes, when to stalk and lay low, and when to pounce on the prey when it is at its most vulnerable. He's got a very good sense of timing. He's canny and shrewd, but Brown can be, he's more flexible than Brown, but Brown can be quite slave-driven and can get through on sheer grit, and dogged in his approach, soldering on against all the odds, which isn't a bad thing. However, he gets maybe a little bit too rigid, and his vision is a bit sort of blinkered. Salmond will have two strong aspects to his North Node. One will test his resolve and inner strength and push his buttons, making him feel frustrated with the behaviour and demands of others. This is going to be quite a clash of values for Salmond over, from late November and throughout next year at times. But also there could be a radical reorganising of a previous setup in favour of something which suits him a lot better. And the eclipse on June 26th signals change in work routines and the working environment. The eclipse for Cameron and Brown will make them feel more able to adapt to the shift in the balance in their public persona, their private lives too, their career direction. They'll be struggling, both of them, really hard in these areas. There's major and significant and very radical changes going to be affecting their social status, their public image over many months to come, and worldly ambitions too. Changes likely with work colleagues, and it will be necessary to work very hard at striking a balance with opposite numbers. And so there's going to be a pressing need for them to learn how to cooperate, compromise with certain significant others, to act jointly maybe in a way to further aims and ambitions, and above all promote growth and abundance. And that's a very, very quick, my very quick take on what the sort of major points of what's coming up for those, well, for men really, over the months to come. So I leave you to draw your own conclusions from that, and I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.